Welcome, everyone, to the Patron podcast. I'm the honored here now to have an opportunity to bring on a very special guest today, a man with multiple accomplishments, best-selling author, best-selling speaker, highly sought-after individual for reading, and being a chance to get on this man on this show is a great honor of mine. I have Mr. Howard Berg. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Howard, obviously, you're well accomplished in the area of speed reading and really actually just getting people to learn information at a very quick level. And so I'd like to get a chance to inform our audience about your background and how you really came to be to that moment of this was what you were going to specialize in and how you succeeded in this.
So I'm recognized as the world's fastest reader. I was in the 1990 Guinness book, and no one ever replaced my reading claim of 80 pages per minute. And it started in Brooklyn. And, people in Brooklyn are known for their keen intellects and good dialects. Well, I grew up in a bad part of Brooklyn, the Linden Projects, very violent.
Okay.
It was West Side Story without the music and dancing.
Ouch.
I met Bernardo. He had a knife and he wasn't smiling. Definitely no music, no dancing.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, we moved when they raped an 88-year-old man. So that puts
There's
it
no
in
word.
a perspective. I was mugged 100 times. Everyone was. My dad was pistol whipped. I had
God.
knives to my throat in school. It was just the normal. I didn't even think I told my parents someone tried to kill me today. It was just another day of school. It was just a
Oh
normal.
my God.
Yeah, I've been thinking. I don't think I mentioned it, but yeah, that was normal. That was the way you grew up. But I found a safe place, the library. Apparently, gang kids treat libraries like vampires treat churches. I've never been in the library and felt threatened. Or a
Okay.
bookstore. It's still probably true. If you want to be safe from gangs marauding a neighborhood, just hang to the library and there won't be anyone there.
So, so that was your sanctuary, your area of peace. If I could ask, around what age was that?
8,
Okay.
9, but let's put it this way. I went to college at 17. My mom gave me two choices. Brooklyn College, I'd get a new car at 17. Or I could go to SUNY Binghamton where there was minus 40 wind chills and there'd be no money for a car because it was a campus. And I picked the Arctic. I was so glad to get out of where I
Right.
lived
Right.
that I was willing to give up a brand new car at 17. That tells you a lot about how bad where I was.
I don't think I could have passed up the car. You know what I mean? But I mean, you had a
I
different.
think you would have if you would brought up where I was.
Yeah, that may be true. But
It
it's
was
all.
bad. It was really bad. But the good news is I had college reading when I was 11.
Yeah.
I remember reading the theory of relativity when I was 8. And I did understand it. And I don't know all the calculus, obviously, but
Yeah.
I understood the premise of what he was doing
Hmm.
really well. In fact, I have a funny story if you want from that. Many, many years later, I think it was in the 80s, I had dinner with an interesting couple. One of them was the top civilian in their strategic defense. They had the stamp. It says top secret.
Right. Right.
Someone's stamping it. They had the stamp. They were the ones that said this is top
Are you
secret.
kidding me?
No, but
Wow.
the other guy was more interesting.
Yeah.
And he has a book you want to look at. His name was Colonel Tom Bearden.
Okay.
Have you ever watched the X-Files?
Oh, I used to
And
watch
you
it all the time
wondered,
as a kid.
is there really an X-Files? Is there really like a Scully and Mulder? And the answer is yes. That
Wow.
was Tom Bearden. That was his job. But he didn't work for the FBI. He was in the military. He told me a story.
Hmm.
In the 60s, and a NATO jet with live nukes went down near the Canary Islands.
Hmm.
They couldn't find it. And obviously they were a little upset over that because it had live nukes. And they tried everything. I mean, radar, sonar. They did all the normal stuff.
Right.
Around that time, Russia was seriously using psychics for spying. Now, our generals didn't think it would work.
Hmm.
But what if they said, well, what if we're wrong? Let's at least try it, see what happens. So Bearden was in charge of the group.
Oh
that
my
was
God.
doing psychic spying. And when they couldn't find the jet, they said, well, let's ask those crazy people in the basement because we can't find it. We got nothing to lose, and that's what they're supposed to be able to do.
Yeah.
So, given nothing but the story, they meditated and he gave them the longitude and latitude of the plane, and that's how they found it.
Are you
They
serious?
did, yeah,
Wow.
remote viewing. They found the plane through remote viewing. So he wrote a book called The Excalibur Briefing, and I had dinner with him,
Yeah.
and it was probably one of the most interesting meals of my life. Uh, so I was talking about the theory of relativity. So I said
Mhm.
when I was very young, like 8 or 9, I had some ideas, like theories, spin-off ideas from the
Mhm.
theory of relativity. I said I really never had anyone to talk about with it. And since you guys are in the Strategic Defense Command and know this stuff, okay, throw some of these ideas at you and see how crazy they were. So I gave them my ideas, and they looked at me and said, "4 of your ideas won Nobel Prizes." But to be fair, you actually have to prove it. You can't just have an idea. If for some reason you actually have to prove your idea, and when you're 9 years old, you don't have too much access to
Right.
advanced physics labs.
So
But
that's crazy.
I was surprised. Honestly, I didn't expect that, but made me feel vindicated that at least I wasn't totally out of my mind. Because when I told my friends what I was thinking, they thought I was nuts. Because
Oh,
I was 9 years old and they were 9 years old, and they're looking at football and baseball,
right.
and I'm talking about the meaning of life. And I'll
Right.
give you one. Would you like one?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, you know, as a scientist, I have a degree in psychobiology.
I saw that.
They talk about the universe starts off as a singularity smaller than an atom. Everything's packed in there. It's all of space. It's all of time. It's all of reality.
Right.
And then it explodes and it gets really big and it
Right.
continues to get really big. So a
Right.
question people would often say is, well, if that's everything, where does it get big? It's expanding into what? It's everything. How
Right.
does something that's everything get bigger?
Right.
It's everything.
Exactly.
So I was thinking about it. I'll give you a cogent answer. If you picture in your mind the little point that it starts with being really tiny and blows up and gets really big, I want you to notice something interesting. The infinite tiny point and the infinite blow up, they fit between your ears and your mind. So if the universe is made out of consciousness, which is kind of what the Bible says, there's some thinker that makes a universe, that's where it starts, right?
Right.
Uh, it could get bigger and bigger and still be the same size because it fits between your ears.
Right.
Doesn't matter how big it gets,
It's
it's
true.
still the same size.
Yeah. I
And
never
that's
thought of
the
it.
kind of thing I did as a kid. I was a little different. But what I've learned to do is teach it to help
Mhm.
other people develop this capacity to think differently, know more, understand. We live in a knowledge based economy. And basically, your success depends on only one thing what you know.
Absolutely.
There's a
Absolutely.
reason a brain surgeon makes more money than a person who makes holes in the sidewalk. That's a hard job in the summer.
Right.
But
Right.
brain surgeon makes more money because what he knows is worth more money than a person with a brain tumor. They'll
Right.
pay a lot more money to get the tumor removed than have someone dig a hole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, in my quest to find things like this is what led me to create this podcast, because
Perfect.
sometimes we become very insular with how we view the world. I'm going to the grocery store, I drop my kids off at school, and I have my little 3 mile radius that I do every single day. And we're wired differently like that, because what we'll find out is that there's a burning sensation to learn things. And so you can do two things with it. You can watch it or you can experience it, right? And so I said, okay, after watching things, I needed to actually organically listen to people who have accomplished things. Your accomplishments are stellar. I mean, you've completed a 4 year program in 1 year. That's
Yeah,
crazy. I went to
yeah.
college for 5 years.
Well, I went for four. I started college at 17. I majored in biology, but in my last half of my junior year, I got interested in learning in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, you needed two majors, bio and psych. There's a branch called psychobiology. not psychotic biology. That's Frankenstein. Psychobiology is the biology of learning. So I went to the dean. I said, I want to do a psych program. And he looked at me. He said, Howard, you're second semester junior. You hadn't had one psych course. You'll have to do the 4-year program all in 1 year. And you want to finish the bio program. So you have to take 6 science courses at the same time in college, at a high
Oh,
level college, 2 4-hour labs. Lab reports were on a slide rule. So they took 16 hours to do the calculations because you'd have 20, 30 numbers with 4 decimals, and you were doing standard deviation by hand, longhand, no calculator.
right. There's no
So,
Chat GPT that's going to help you do all this, right?
oh
So,
God, no, there was no computers. It was a slide rule. It was like the Middle Ages. The only thing we had electric lights. We'd have to use candles and bird feathers dipped in ink. But other than that, it was pretty rudimentary. So it took 16 hours to do one lab report, and that two. So it's 40 hours a lab, 18 credits of science. And just to make it a little edgy, I had 3 jobs. I was working 18 hours a week. So he looked at me, he said, Howard, you're not smart enough. And I was like, they
oh,
don't teach learning in school. They tell you what to learn, why to
right,
learn, what will happen when you don't learn. But no, why you hear a song on the radio once, you never forget it.
right.
You read the 7 habits of highly effective people. The next day, you don't know a single habit. And I said, there's got to be a way to learn things that matter. I got up to
Yeah.
80 pages a minute using what I learned about the brain. I retained it. I did the psych program in 1 year. And then I took the GRE, which is the SAT for grad school, in
Right.
bio. So I went through 48 bio books in 3 nights, like biochemistry, cell physiology, genetics, plant systematics. Most people would agree that's not the lightest reading. I got
No.
3 questions wrong. I got an 800. I was in the 99th percentile in the world for all the biologists graduating. And then I realized I was onto something. I
Yeah.
said, I had to teach this to people. I had a school where 11-year-olds were in college getting A's in a week. They gave them a 30-chapter book in lifelong developmental psych. They were 11 to 15. They did it in a week. I'm going to show you how today. And they took the CLEP, which is like an AP test, and
Mm-hmm.
15 out of 18 youngsters, 11 to 15, got full college credit on a sophomore psych course in 1 week.
Are you kidding me?
No, and I could show you on the show what we were teaching them. That's really what I think you want me for.
Yeah, that'd be. I have an 11-year-old actually. I have an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 5-year-old. So, I
They
mean,
can
that would
do
be.
it. Oh God, they could do it. The 11-year-old for certain.
Mhm.
9-year-old, maybe.
Right.
Maybe. It depends on how mature and motivated they are. There's
Yeah.
different maturity levels at that age. Some of them are very focused,
Right.
and some of them are still more kids, which is fine. They're 9 years old. It's not like
Right.
if you're 9 and you're a child, well, big surprise.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's not a shock to find that out.
Right.
But 11, they're kind of in middle school. They're kind of learning. You got to sit all day. You're going to listen to people talk all day. They're more used to it. So if you'd like, we could go into some of the things that make this work.
That's why we're here. So I definitely would love to hear it.
So why do we read slowly? When you're in a car, you read the road. And if you're on a typical highway, you go about 70 miles an hour, depending on the state.
Yeah.
And you're reading in 4 directions: the front, the back, the left, the right, all at the same time. And you're watching your gauges and you're listening to your GPS and you're bored. So you turn the radio on, you talk to your friends,
Yeah.
and you're on the phone
Right.
all at the same time sometimes, and you're still bored. When you read a book, it's in front of you,
Yeah.
and you read about 200 words a minute. That's the mode, the normal speed people have.
Yeah.
And the next day, you remember maybe 10% of what you read if you're lucky. So why is reading the road at 70 miles an hour while you're doing 100 things easier than reading a book at 200 words a minute in one direction? And the answer to that is the secret to reading fast. Would you like to know the
I would love.
secret?
I'm on pins and needles actually because you described me to a T.
When most people drive in a car everything around them is like a movie. You're seeing everything visually.
Yeah.
You're seeing it like a movie. When you read a book, it's like there's someone in back of your head pronouncing one word at a time. And mostly they speak at the same speed you speak. And so
Oh.
most people read at the speaking speed because they're hearing a book with their eyes.
Yeah. And not.
What we're
Yeah.
teaching people is the movie mind, how to
Okay.
see the book more like a movie. And I could
Yeah.
demonstrate it if you'd like. You could see it.
Absolutely.
If you look around you, I said, look at everything near you that's the color blue and memorize it. And as you look around, you'll see different blue things
Yeah.
and memorize it because I'm gonna do a memory quiz on it in a moment. I want you to close your eyes unless you're in a car.
No, I would
If
never
you're
do
in
this
a
driving.
car, please do not close your eyes.
I can assure you, I'm not. I'm not in a
Yeah,
car.
yeah, we can have some problems with
Yeah, I don't know how it is
well,
where
if
you're
you're
at.
in a car, you do not have to close your eyes. And I want you to remember everything you just looked at colored red and something just happened. You basically, wait a minute. You said everything colored blue and something interesting happened. Blue things got brighter and bigger
Right.
and louder, and everything else, including red, got littler and dimmer and further away. Your brain amplified what you were focused on, and this is important. The brain has a mechanism. It's actually at the back. It's called the reticular activating system.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in a mall and there's thousands and thousands of people, you don't know them, so you just ignore them. And then your friend shows up or someone else you didn't expect, and you see them, but you have to see all the other faces to see the one face that mattered.
Right.
Your brain has this ability to pull information out of a crowded field of data when it's purposeful, meaningful, actionable. The people you know matter.
Right.
When you're reading with a purpose, a goal, an objective, the brain knows what you're trying to find. So, not just the conscious brain, but the part of your brain that sees all those faces
Yeah.
in the mall when you're walking around finds the ones that matter. It does that in a book too. And so you're actually
Oh.
finding things using the movie mind
Right.
at very high speeds that are relevant to your goal or purpose. When you say, what if I don't have a goal or purpose? That's one of the things I'm teaching.
Yeah.
How to have a goal or purpose, what the goal or purpose should be.
Yeah.
And then even though you're going 2, 3, 4 times faster, you're actually understanding better because you're finding exactly what you need to say. Do I read every word? I'll ask you a simple question. Tell me one full page you ever read word for word. Any page. You can't.
No.
Maybe a poem, but you can't because we don't learn the words. We learn the information. And so I'm looking for the information you're going to remember in the
Yeah.
future to use. I don't need all the words. I
Right.
need everything that really matters that I'm going to actually use. And I'm teaching people how to do that with the movie mind and teaching them how to focus on what matters at the higher speed. And the outcome is not only can they read faster, but they're reading better. And if you'd like, I can give you another example.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because this is fascinating to me, and I wanted to ask a question, but I'll wait till you
Sure,
get done.
good. That's fine, good.
So, so this must help businesses really well when they're putting either business manuals, work manuals, instructions. Because how many times does somebody get something, and they're like, "Dude, I'm too busy to read this," and then they'll have XYZ follow up about it, and then they're looking with a blank slate on their face, like, "Dude, that was on page 5." You're like, "Man, I'm sorry, I just didn't remember anything that I."
Or worse, they spend a day getting trained in something very important
Yeah.
and they invest a lot of money.
Yeah.
And a month later, all they remember is that good donuts and great bagels, and they
Yeah.
made some nice friends. What
Right.
they learned is gone. They have no idea. What
Right.
if we didn't just teach people what they need to know, but we also taught how to remember it when you need to know it? Whoa. Why don't we? They don't teach that in
No.
school, do they?
No.
It's
No.
your fault you don't know. But
Right.
what did they do to teach you to remember it or retain it or recall it or use it later?
Absolutely.
Nothing. But it's on you. And that can be fixed.
So, what was the second example you were speaking of?
So one of the key elements in reading, it's called schema, which is a big word. I'm going to read a passage. It has no schema, and watch how it makes no sense. Then I'll read it a second time with a title, one word that has schema, and instantly it'll make total sense. One word difference. Okay, this is the text with no schema. This is an easy thing to do. If possible, you could do it at home, but you can always go someplace else if it's necessary. Beware of overdoing it. This is a major mistake. It may cost you quite a bit of money. What am I talking about?
I have no idea.
No one does. Well, I do, but that's because I'm talking.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, it could be a lot of
So
things.
I'll
Getting
read
married?
it again. I'm only going to change one word, just one word. Watch the difference in your understanding. There's a title. The title on this is laundry. Laundry. This is an easy thing to do. If possible, you could do it at home, but you can always go someplace else if it's necessary. Beware of overdoing it. This is a major mistake. It may cost you quite a bit of money. How confused are you now?
It totally, I understood everything that this was about.
What if people used the science of schema when they wrote training manuals or textbooks
Yeah,
so that you wouldn't just read what you need to read, but actually understood it and made it meaningful and deeply understood
right.
instead of just you figure it out. Here's a bunch of words, go figure it out. That's one of the problems that we're facing is we don't teach these things and people teach the way they were taught. Here's a bunch of facts, read them and learn them. How
Right.
do I do that? How would I know? Do what you did in school. Oh, I didn't do well in school,
So it follows up with it too, because then we end up judging people on what they memorized and not what they learned, right?
which is bad because you can memorize a calculus book. A lot of people did in college.
Right.
They knew every formula and they knew how to plug numbers into every formula. And then they failed the test. Why did they fail the test? They didn't know how to use any of them.
Nope.
They
Nope.
knew what they were,
Sounds like
and they
me.
knew and they knew what numbers you could plug into them. But
Right.
someone gave you a problem where you had to use them. Which one do I use? How do I use? What order do they go in?
Right.
No idea. They never taught that.
Right.
They just gave you a bunch of formulas to memorize. So even if you remembered every formula perfectly, you failed anyway. You had no idea what to do with it. They
Yes.
don't teach learning. They just give you stuff. And they stuff your head with all this information. They don't tell you how to remember it. They don't tell you how to use it. They don't tell you why you're learning it in the first place.
No.
Why would you need it? And that's a big problem in business later on because they learned all this information but they never really knew what they could do with it, and then when they need to use it in the real world they're like, I don't know, I learned this but I don't know what to do. I have no idea.
So you get all this training through college and you master it, your own system. How did you begin to expand it to where people were quote unquote buying into it? That you're saying, listen, this method works. You took it to, I mean, with all respect, did you take it to your first job? Did you say, hey, you know what? How did that? How did the steps happen after college?
Well, I had a school and I used, before we taught my students anything, science, math, English, what was the first thing they learned? How to learn, how to read and understand and remember, what to look for, how to know when you found it,
Yeah,
how to analyze what you read. It you didn't understand it. You read it, you remember it, but you don't know what it means. How are you going to figure out what it means?
yeah,
Comprehension. How do you comprehend things that are confusing you? Because you still need to know it. And then here's a big one: how to create the state of mind where you can use it successfully. How many people went for a road test and failed,
no,
not because they couldn't drive, because they got nervous it was a test?
right,
What if you didn't just get taught how to drive, but how to stay calm during the test? That's why I trained the special forces at Fort Bragg and the Royal Thai Army in Bangkok. They were under some stressful conditions in the field.
You,
How to stay focused.
that's funny you mentioned that because I'm even thinking of the time when I did my driver's training. I'm 41, and you never got taught to just kind of chill. Hey, it never happened. So you're behind the wheel. I remember my mother's in the passenger, she's in the back seat, the driver instructor's in the front seat, and you're a wreck. You're a 16-year-old kid, and your palms are sweaty. But to your point, nobody ever said, "Hey, your method of staying calm, relaxing," and I can only imagine how valuable that was to a soldier. I mean, I'm a 16-year-old. If I flunk, right, the driver instructor has a brake on his side, he can stop the car. You're talking about the worst of the worst conditions that though they have to be completely in control of their emotions. That's amazing.
They're up 4 days, sometimes with no sleep,
Oh my gosh.
on a very dangerous mission. It's going very poorly. It happens. If they don't remember everything they were told, they could get killed. You have a bad
Absolutely.
day, you go home late, or you have to give up vacation and take it another time. They don't go home. So
Right.
I was showing them. I'll tell you one thing I taught them that would be helpful right now, if that would help.
Yes.
I said, here's a question you need to ask when you're having a really bad day. I says, can anyone tell me what's the single best question you can ask yourself when you're having a bad day? Would you like to know what the answer to that is?
Absolutely love to know that answer.
What's the next best thing I can do now? Not, why is this happening to me?
Right.
This isn't fair. I deserve better. You know what? It's happening. And
Right.
it's not fair. And you do deserve better. That isn't going to fix the problem.
No doubt.
What you
No
need
doubt.
to do is look at where am I and where would I rather be? How do I get there?
Right.
You need to start looking at solutions to
Right.
your situation instead of feeling sorry for yourself, which is what people do. They sink into a depression, or they get nervous, or they
Right.
get frustrated, and what happens? They can't think. Now the problem isn't the problem anymore. The problem is they're useless. They can't do anything because they're so debilitated by
Right.
this state. So I teach emotional intelligence, how to create states that you can trigger on demand. And so you can trigger relaxation, you can trigger focus, you can trigger concentration. What would that do the next time you have a bad day? Instead of fretting over it, you get clarity, you look at your options, and you choose the best one instead of feeling sorry for yourself. How much different would your life be?
It'd be monumentally different. And I can speak just as a regular person. I think one of the issues that people have is that their routine finds reasons for them to sulk. Right. You wake up, go to work, drop the kids off at school, walk the dog, go home, maybe take the kid to dance or softball, whatever the case may be, and you kind of get in that routine, and then somebody cuts you off in traffic and you lose it. You get a flat tire, and then those things derail their state of mind, so to speak, and then they're completely lost, and then that flat tire has ruined the rest of the day, right? The complete rest
It's
of the day.
even worse. It's even worse. Most people try to succeed, make more money. There's two things 99% of the public would do. They work longer hours,
Yeah.
or they get a second job.
Right.
You will not make more money working more hours or working a second job. The way you make more money is learn a new skill. Read 10 books on something you need to know. I'll give you an example. I was teaching in Brooklyn. 2% graduated in this school. And I tried to teach them, they wouldn't let me. 2% graduate. I didn't want to be there. No one, the principal didn't want to be there. So I read 10 books on how do you make a program. What do I know about making a program? I'm a biologist.
Yeah.
They don't teach that in bio class.
Right. No.
So I read 10 books by people making programs. Oh, now I make a program. I'll make a program. And then so well, I got to sell it. What do I know about selling? I was a biologist. They don't teach selling in biology.
Right.
I read
Right.
10 books by people going on shows like this,
Yeah.
making money selling programs. So I sold 97 programs in 5 minutes on one show and 197 on another show. I made 6 months' income as a teacher in in a little over an hour. And I'm looking at, okay, I can work 6 months in a school when nobody's
Uh,
doing anything.
right.
I can work for an hour and do a show.
The new skill set paid itself
Which
off.
future do I want for myself?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
this is the same for our listeners. You want to be in a better position in life, you can learn something that pays better, or even stay where you are and learn better skills to do what you're doing. You're not going to make more money doing what you do unless you make a qualitative change in the quality of what you do.
Right.
And so for me, from teaching to going on shows to writing books and lecturing, and it's been exciting. I've been all over the world and other people pay for it. It's nice. It's very nice when you fly all over the world and you bring
Well,
your wife and your vacation and you're working. I enjoy it.
you know the thing I think that discourages people is when they see like your story is absolutely exquisite to come from the situation you came from. But I think sometimes people can't see that in themselves. They don't see like that's a regular person that came from certain circumstances. Like they'll see a famous actor and they'll be like, oh well, they're just like that. They make a lot of money, blah blah blah. No, this person was in the school plays, you know, when all that was viewing that was their mother and their father. And so the work that you put in will pay off on the back end. So I just have to ask this question: when you started implementing these methods, what resistance did you start getting from the educational and business community because they had such an ingrained way of how people were supposed to retain information and
First,
learn?
I do educate. This is a true story. So when I went to this school, when I was assigned, they told me 2% graduate. Remember, that's a
Mm,
98% failure rate. Okay. So I told the principal, I can help you. I'll teach them how to learn. And I don't expect 100%, not
right.
from 2%. Maybe get
Anything
to
that's good.
20, 30%. That would be amazing.
That's my point. Yeah.
So let me help. And he looks at me and says, it's not in the curriculum. You can't do it. So he's the boss. Can't
But you're
say
failing.
no. Yeah, he's the principal. I'm a teacher. So all right. So I'm teaching biology, and one of my kids raises his hand. He says, "Mr. Berg, I don't know how to do the homework questions that are in the bio book. Where are the answers to the questions? I can't find them." So I'm showing him the answers are in the chapter, and I'm showing him how to find the answers to the homework I'm giving him in bio.
Mm,
But this moment, the principal walks in. He says, "What are you doing?"
give
He
them the
says, he
answers.
asked me to show him how to find the answers in his book to the bio homework. He says, "You're not working. I told you not to teach learning." And he wrote down that he came to watch me and I was not doing my job. I was teaching learning. I wasn't teaching what I was supposed to be paid to do. And I'm like, really?
And
It's
this,
the bio book. It's the bio student. I'm the bio teacher
yeah.
and he's asking me how to do homework in biology. That's not my job. That's the education system. I'll
Wow.
give you one more, even worse, much worse. So one of my students is reading his book upside down and backwards. That's a tip off that maybe he can't read.
Right.
You learn to look for these things. So I go to the head of the guidance department and I say, I think I have a student who's illiterate. And he says, "Oh, is that Mohammed?"
You gotta be
I
kidding
said,
me.
"Yeah." He said, "Well, Mohammed's never been to school. He's from Afghanistan." I said, "Well, he's in a high school bio class." He says, "He doesn't know how to read." He said, I said, "Yeah, he doesn't know how to read." He says, "Does he come every day?" He says, "He's one of my only students who shows up every day.
Yeah.
Maybe you can get him a tutor to help him learn to read." He says, "Well, if he comes every day, we're getting paid. Don't worry about it. He'll be 21 in 6 months and we'll throw him out. He'll be too old." I said, "Well, you got 6 months. Maybe you could get someone to work with him. He's here every day."
Right.
"You're not listening to me. We're getting paid. He's here every day. Don't worry about it. We're throwing him out in 6 months." And I said, "But what about helping him? Don't you tell me how to do my job."
Oh my
I'm like, that's not your job. You're the head of the guidance department.
god.
That's
Unbelievable.
the school system.
Yeah, that's terrible. And
That's
there's
the
some
school system.
and there's some merit to that, and I think that it does it matter the length of the book or the course that somebody's taking when it comes to the speed that they retain the information. So do you prefer somebody to really?
No, we had kids, it's not reading only, it's writing. We had them writing 28-page MLA cited reports. And because it was a homeschool group, it was on the book of Matthew. in 4 hours. Now, the person I work with had a doctorate in theology and was teaching a graduate course at a seminary. And he was curious how well our kids wrote.
Hmm.
So he gave the papers to grade to the dean of the seminary, who thought he was grading the graduate student papers. He didn't tell them it was the 11 to 15-year-olds just to see what happened.
Yeah.
So he waits and the guy gives him back the reports. He says, "Oh, how did they do?" He says, "Well, two of them got second year graduate credit. Two of them got first year graduate credit, but I'm a little disappointed. The rest of your students got senior credit." He said, "Well, the oldest student you graded was 15. The rest were less than 11 to 15 years old. As I guess if they're doing senior college writing skills at 11, it isn't so bad."
Right, right, right.
So that's how we knew. It's not a magic trick. If you
Okay.
teach people a system, step by step by step, 11-year-olds are doing it,
Right,
and you're getting A's in college.
right,
I'll
right.
give you a business thing with them. This group of kids, one of the kids had a brother with Down syndrome,
Right.
and these kids decided they were going to raise money to help find a cure. They were 11 to 15.
Yeah.
So they read a book on how to build a website by themselves, built it, got a product. It was a mouse, a felt mouse, because the researchers were using special Downs mice.
Hmm.
And they built a website. They spoke before Rotary and Line. They took speech lessons. And they made $93,000 in their first year of business. The oldest one was 15, the youngest was 11. But here's the best part: every year in Vegas, there's an award like the Oscars and the Tony. It's in business for the marketers. They won as the
Yeah.
best business plan in America.
Wow.
They beat Rotary. They beat American Cancer. They beat Red Cross. They were 11 to 15 years old. They won as the best not for profit business plan in America. And they were 11 to
That's
15.
well.
And they made $93,000. So when people say, maybe I'm too old, no, these are kids. And an 84-year-old read three books in 3 hours the day after I taught her.
Oh my.
84.
Well, I think that's a lot of the. I think that's a lot of the resistance that people have to different learning. Right. I'm too busy. I'm too old, and I don't want to go back to college. Right. Like anything that relates to anything like that, they like to stay in that little pocket of. They don't want to touch
Comfort
it.
zone. I make it fun. I've been on Comedy Central 9 times. I helped launch it with Dennis Leary,
Yeah.
and I was Jon Stewart's first guest. I'll show you why biologists don't get asked to do comedy if you would like.
I would love to.
A mushroom walks in a bar. The bartender says, "Get out. We don't serve your kind." The mushroom said, "Why not? I'm a fun guy." And that's why biologists don't do comedy. But I use it in teaching. If people are laughing, and smiling and having fun, they're going to learn
Right.
because they feel good. And the brain wants to remember what made me feel like that.
Right.
And what made you feel like that was learning how to be a genius, which you can do.
Right.
It isn't hard. It takes a few hours. You read 100% faster or better. You remember it. You
Right.
know how to learn it when it confused you. You know how to stay focused and connect the dots and use it in it. But it's at Berg Learning, berglearning.com.
Yeah, I got a chance to go there, and I just it says you're in 127 different countries. You helped
Yes.
us. What else did it? I have a couple
Yeah,
notes.
and it's in that many languages. It's in like over 100 languages. So if you speak Spanish or French or Thai or any language, it's in that language, so you can learn it in your own language,
And
not
you
just in English.
and you've deployed it obviously in other countries and have partners as well too. And I saw. I have to ask this question because it was so fascinating to me. The Royal Thai Army. That's great.
Yeah,
That's
that
nuts.
was really exciting. It was really exciting. I was the general, the two leading generals, the ones who ran the whole army.
Yeah.
I had lunch with them, and I trained all the officers, the colonels, the generals,
Wow.
the captains, the majors. No one below that rank was allowed in that workshop. It was captains and up. It was really an
Wow.
exciting day. I was in Bangkok,
Yeah.
which was also exciting. If you know anything about Bangkok, for some reason the women found me very attractive. I was like, when did I start looking like Brad Pitt? All
Right,
these
right,
women
right.
are like, hey, come on over. And I'm like, when did I get so? I didn't realize what Bangkok was about.
We'll keep it PG on this show, but
Yeah, it's well named. Let's put it that way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I got it. This is so fascinating. I'm so appreciative of your time. I just have a couple more questions. It seems like your method almost would be great for like an actor who has to read scripts.
Yes. Or a speaker who needs to
Yeah.
remember what they're presenting, or a student that wants to get a better grade, or a business person who just read a new law that they have to put into operation
Right.
and remember what they were told to do and not make mistakes because they could be fined.
Right.
Everyone needs this.
Right.
It's not just for fun reading, it's for learning anything that matters in a knowledge based economy. It's only about one thing: what you know. There's no more job security in this country.
Mhm.
The only job security you have is what's your knowledge. And if something changes, you can change quickly because you can learn a new skill in just a few hours' time. And that's what I'm teaching people is how to be able to learn information that'll keep them ahead of the competition or retrain into something better that'll pay you more money.
I have to ask this question too, and this seems like this would be really useful. You've probably segued into this because you have so many. It segues into so many different aspects of life, reading and understanding. Instruction manuals. Are you involved in within when it comes? Because there's nothing worse than those things, right? Especially like Christmas is coming up. You're assembling a kid's toy, or you have something in your house, and 9 times out of 10 you freestyle it because you can't get past. The damn thing's this thick, and you're like, no, no, I'm not reading all that.
Yeah, you got to be a PhD mechanic to put a
Right.
bike together. It's all
Oh
these
my
little
god.
pieces. Well, when I worked in the school, I wrote training for the students. I'm seeing how well they did. One student, he was 10. He did high school biology in 1 week. You may say, 1 week? School in America is based on one thing: time. You spend a year in first grade.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't learn anything, then you spend a year in second grade.
Right.
And you didn't learn anything, you go to third grade. By
Yeah.
the time they're in high school, they can't read, write, or count, and they're learning calculus, and they're
Mm-hmm.
learning science, and they
Right.
can't do it. So, no, our school didn't work like that.
Yeah.
It worked on skills. When you finished the skill, you went to the next level. So, all our tests for essays, no multiple choice, no fill ins. You
Right.
had to explain your answer. You had to give a
That
good
makes sense.
explanation.
That makes
So
sense.
here's a couple of his high school essays. Explain the genetic code and how it works. This is an 11, 10, 11-year-old kid. Oh, what are mitochondria? If you could give me 300 essays like that and get 2 or 3 wrong, I think you've learned high school biology.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny, right? I mean, like that's quantitative. Just because somebody can't get the multiple choice answer correctly doesn't mean they don't know what it is. And so it's kind of funny because I take martial arts and you don't get promoted through martial arts, a good school anyway, because you did this for a year. You have to be good at that particular skill set to get promoted. And so you master that particular skill set at that particular ranking to get promoted to the next belt. And so that's been helpful because when it comes to the same way you learn is kind of the same way they should teach martial arts. And most good schools do that, you know.
Do you want a pilot who got a D in landings or a surgeon who got a C minus in surgery? So why are kids getting C's and D's in school and move to the next level of learning? They still haven't learned what they've gotten at the beginning. Every student should need to get an A
Right.
in whatever they're learning. We only had one grade, and we didn't give them an A.
Yeah.
They earned it. They
Right.
learned what we taught them. You don't get the next thing till you finish this one. And
Right.
we train them to learn how to learn. And because they were self guided, when they struggled, the teacher worked with them individually, never gave them the answer. Never.
Right.
They gave them information to think and figure out the answer. How are you going to be a leader if every time there's a problem, someone solves it for you?
You
You
can't be.
need to learn how to think.
Right.
And so we focused on teaching them learning skills and thinking skills. And they earned that A. And
Right.
until they earned it, they didn't go to the next, forget the next subject. They didn't go to the next lesson.
Right.
You stay on lesson 1 till you got an A. You stay on lesson 2 till you got an A. There's no B's, there's no C's and D's.
Right. Yeah.
It's an A. Can you almost know arithmetic?
No.
I mean, it's insane. And if you go to a normal school, they're getting C's and D's, and they move them into high school. They can't read. 28% of the seniors can't read. 38% can't count. And did you know 90% can't write a paragraph as seniors? As seniors. How did it happen? They never learned it. They just keep moving them based on time, not on understanding.
That makes
That's
perfect
not
sense.
how school should work.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense actually, because then when you raise the bar of understanding a particular task, then you have quote unquote mastered that particular item to go on to the next one. It's almost like a video game analogy, right? You didn't almost pass that level to go to the next level. You have to pass that level to get to the next one.
And that's at school. And let's say someone can't do it. That's okay. Then what they do in Germany is they put them on a vocational path. You'd make a great chef. You could be a plumber. Plumbers make great money. Electricians make great money.
Both of mine have made off of me.
Have them go to high school and can't read, write, or count, or learn to be an electrician or a plumber or an auto mechanic, making really good money, doing something they're competent at. Maybe it's acting or music or drama, but they don't push them to learn higher level math when they can't do simple math. You give them the skills that their bodies and minds are capable of and maximize their potential in life by teaching them skills they can do and will enjoy that will pay the bills and make them happy. But that's not how we do it. We keep pushing them up, and then they get to a point where they have to fail. 98% failure rate. Why? They couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I gave them the answer key to the test during the test, and they all failed. They couldn't read the answer key. And it was true-false questions. True-false. And I taught them to guess, and they failed anyway.
I'm not trying to laugh at the fact that they failed. It's to how bad the learning process was them at that point, that their mind was conditioned in that way. And, and I'm sure I would hate to take another hour just on this topic, and because I'm sure there's a history of how school got to that point and how it's ingrained to not get out of this. And you probably have a lot of arm twisting and a lot of, I would say,
it's not going to change.
No. I was going to say there's a lot of entrenched things as to why it stays the way that it has.
That's why parents buy my program for their kids.
Right.
Because I'm not going to play games with their kid. I'm going to teach them how to learn. The parent will make more money at work.
Right.
The senior will be, I'm 75.
Mm-hmm.
Seniors will stay mentally fit as they get older because their brain is in mush. They're thinking, they're learning, they're doing. And the kids learn the skills they need to master the subjects they're taking to have a life.
Right.
But you're not going to learn this in school.
No, not even close.
This.
Not even close.
Berg Learning, BERG, berglearning.com.
So, I think I've picked your brain on just about everything I possibly could. I know that you have digital certificates that are on LinkedIn. I'm just looking at some of my notes here. You do e-reading. Do you have any questions for me at all? I know that I've been really appreciative about this. And
tell me some of the things you would like to know more about. Maybe I can give you some pointers.
Honestly, it would be time management, patience, and how to master better this kind of process of interviewing and reaching out to people.
Okay, we could do all three. We'd start with time management. So we set up, everyone should be using their daytime. Well, you don't use daytime. You should be using your Outlook calendar, and you put down your tasks. These are the things, and you have your ones are things you must do. This is not an option. This is the day it's got to be done, not tomorrow. It's too late.
Right.
Two are things you want to do, but aren't urgent. They're important, but they're not urgent.
Right.
And three are things you would like to do if you had the time.
Right.
So now you got your ones. You could have a 1A, a 1B, and a 1C. All of these things need to get done today. And you don't go to anything else till A, B, and C are done. Nothing.
Right.
These are your priorities. You start with what has to be done, then with what you want to do, and then what you need to do. So it's urgent, need to do, and want to do. Always urgent comes first. You can't have too many urgent so nothing gets done. You'll just be spinning your wheels.
Right.
And with big projects, it's like how to eat an elephant, one bite at a time.
Absolutely.
You break down a big project into lots of little pieces,
Right.
and every day you learn a little piece. So you always feel like you're succeeding. If all you do is look at the big project, you're always failing until you get to the end. You then reach it. But if you do little pieces all along the way, you're constantly succeeding. Your state of mind is more positive. Now for, was it temper or?
Patience and right, temperament, and not getting upset about the small things, and that have
Okay, there's a few things. One thing you could do is breathing. Breathing affects our state. If you do a breathing exercise for 3 minutes where you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, and you exhale for 4 seconds, and you repeat that for 3 minutes, you're going to get in a very, very relaxed state. It helps you to break the mental state that's causing the stress and removing your focus. Because when we're stressed, we breathe short, rapid breath. You're very nervous. When you're relaxed, it's slow, rhythmic breath. So you're putting your body into that slow, rhythmic breath rhythm. And because your body identifies that state with relaxation, it triggers the state of relaxation. So that's something you can do when you're stressed. And as far as you're doing a good job of working with people,
thank you.
The best thing is be a good listener and ask good questions. And some of that just comes from experience. And then the other side is take my program, read 10 books on how to do fantastic interviews, and look at the top interviews like Dick Cavett. I was on his show. I was with Dick Cavett. I was with Regis, with Jon Stewart. Look at what their styles of interviewing are, the suggestions that they give, and then don't learn it from scratch. Some people are doing it already, and they're very good at it.
Yeah.
You mirror success.
Absolutely.
You find people doing what you dream of doing, and they're doing it and succeeding. And when you have 10 bucks, you say, what did they all do the same? They all got the outcome I'm looking for. And this is one thing they all did. So I probably should do that too.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 is a good number.
Right.
And this is 9 out of 10. And this is an 8 out of 10.
Right.
And you begin seeing patterns these successful people are using, and you start consciously to mirror and repeat that same pattern in your life. And this is in any field, There are people who excel in every field we know. And if you look at the people who are doing the excelling and study them and learn what their mindset is and what they're doing to achieve that state, replicate it. Just do what they're doing. It works. How do you know? They're the best at what they do, and that's what you want to do.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. And I noticed that successful people like to share the information to people too. They're not very closed off because, it helps them out, because then people obviously, whether it's monetarily or whether it's, feeling good wise. But everybody that I've talked to, on these podcasts are all people who want to share information with people. But you got to want the information and follow up with it on the back end as the listener.
You got to use it. I'll teach you one more thing. This will help you. When you're taking notes, it can triple the amount of information you learn. This could be whether it's a video like this, or a book, or a live presentation, like in a lecture, most people take notes on what they're learning. That's it. He told me 3 steps. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. But there's 2 more things they could be writing down. So you have a 3-column table. And in the middle column, what did the writer or speaker do to make it interesting? Did they tell a joke? Did they tell a story? Yeah. What kind of language pattern did they raise their voice, lower their voice? What did they do and made you go, wow, that was fantastic? Because whatever they did, you can do that. To make people say, wow, Rashid, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You're amazing. How did you do that? You used somebody else's system to do it. And you learned it by watching them do it. You took notes on it. And the third thing, this is big. What are you going to do with what you just learned? That's in the 3rd column. And then when you're done taking notes, look at all the things you said you were going to do. And what do you think you're going to do with that? Do them.
Absolutely.
Take 1 to 3 things every day from your notes and do it. You don't learn by watching.
No.
You learn by doing.
No.
And then you triple the amount of information you're learning, and you remember it because you did something with it, and you experienced the benefit. When you doubled your income, when you eliminated your depression, or you met somebody you really love and they like you because you listened to good advice.
Yeah.
You don't need to be taught that again.
Right.
Because it works, you'll never want to forget it. Your brain will remember it forever. That's how real learning happens.
Right.
And so this system will be a benefit. And of course, if they go to berglearning.com, I'll teach them a lot more on how to make more money.
Yes.
So they can, by learning more and understanding better and making fewer mistakes, help their kids finish school, get a good job, and be successful and not live with them till they're 40, which is common today. More students between 26 and 40 live with their families because they can't afford to rent an apartment and pay off tuition.
I know.
And you don't want that happening.
Right.
And finally, if you're getting older, I said I'm 75. I don't think anyone thinks I'm senile. When you're getting older, if you continue learning every day, if you continue using your brain and learning new things, your brain stays young.
Right.
Because it's like a muscle. You're using it. If you do sit in a chair and look out the window, then that's about all you're going to ever be able to do again because you just basically took your brain and turned it into mush.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be that way. You can stay young as long as you're breathing if you choose to.
Right.
You have to make the right choices in life. The right choice is to get smarter by learning better and then learning from people who do the things you dream of doing and doing what they did.
Right.
That's the secret. It's not magic. You're doing what people do to succeed like they did. And then you succeed because it worked.
And I'll just leave with this. It's funny because they'll literally write in their book, step by step, how they did it. You just have to go ahead and duplicate it.
You're not going to learn watching it. You have to go step by step by step, just like they did.
Right.
And that's what I do. I teach baby steps because if you give them little baby steps, every step is easy. Every step is easy. By the time you're done, you're reading 100% faster, 200% faster, 300%, and you know what you're learning, and you know how to remember it, and you know how to understand it when it's confusing, and you know how to apply it.
Right.
That's how success. I'll give you an example. 4 people. Oprah reads a book a day. Bill Gates reads a book a day. Warren Buffett reads a book a day. Elon Musk reads 2 books a day. Well, look at their bank account.
Right.
You want your bank account?
Right.
What's their bank account? What are they doing every day that you're not doing?
Absorbing information and learning.
And using it.
Yep.
And it's not enough to absorb it.
And using
Use it.
Yep.
And that's what I'll teach them at berglearning.com. How to absorb it and how to use it so that they can change their life for the better, have the things they want, a better house. No one gets to say, I want to have an ugly wife and I want to live in a tent in the woods and scrub around for roots and berries because I can't afford to eat. No one's dream is to do that. We
No,
all want
no.
better life, and you don't get that by working more hours or days. You get that by learning skills that pay more money, that give you that better life, and you work less hours,
Right,
and you
right,
have more.
right, right. Well,
That's the secret.
yeah, and it's out there for people to take it. They just have to have the wherewithal and the will to do it. Howard Berg, this advice is invaluable. Is invaluable. It really is. So I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. I appreciate
I
it.
like doing it. It matters to me. I'll give you a secret. I was a yogi when I was younger. I lived in an ashram on weekends. And one thing stuck with me, karma. I think we're supposed to use our lives to make a better world.
Right.
When you look at the news, does anyone think our biggest challenge is too many smart people making too many good choices? I'm not pointing at anyone, but just in general, when you look at what's going on, does anyone think there's just too much genius in the world? That's why everything's screwed up.
No. No.
So what if I was able to make more people intelligent and think and make better choices? I could help make a better world doing that. Not by myself,
Right.
but by empowering the people that I meet with the skills they need to make their lives better. And every one of their lives, as it gets better, it affects us.
Well, I think a lot of people are at an inflection point too, because to your point, that age bracket who don't see themselves moving up the economic ladder, who don't, hey, they can't have kids because they have student loans, they can't buy a house. And then it starts compounding other areas of their life, and it hurts the economy as well too, because they're not having kids, they're not using disposable income, and then there's a thing that I read about where there's male loneliness now, right? Where there's the guy's not dating, the guy's not having kids, and he's spending 80% of his time on the phone or on the internet, social mediaing it, right? And he kind of just gets isolated from the rest of the world.
So what if you spend every hour that you watch sports or surfing the web on learning something that would make you more money and more successful? What would that do to your life? If every one of those minutes was spent on improving yourself instead of watching someone else succeed, how much better would your life be? And that's what I'm teaching. This is the tools that make it happen.
Right.
The tools that expand your capacity to learn and understand.
Right.
It doesn't require you to be a genius.
Right.
You already have a brain that can do amazing things. No one showed you how to use it.
Right. No. They just taught you how to be taught, and here's your diploma or degree. Have a nice day.
They push people down. School is shut up and listen. And that isn't how you become a leader. You don't become a leader by shutting up and listen. And so I'm teaching people how to be in control of their own lives by learning the skills that empower them for success.
Well, I got to tell you, these were some really great words of wisdom coming from a man who's seen the pinnacle of success, and his hard work pay off, and his techniques obviously speak for themselves when it comes to your global and worldwide reach. For you to come and talk to me, I can't thank you enough, because I'm almost feeling like I don't deserve this type of attention on this podcast just starting out. So I want to thank you personally for that.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. This is what I do. I try to share. I feel I can make a difference to people like you by reaching more people.
Well, I want to thank you for that. And it's been an awesome journey and ride. I think I'm going to start picking up some books, because I need to practice what I preach and what I listen to on this show.
The program, berglearning.com, so you don't just pick them up. You learn them in half the time and remember them and understand them and can use them.
Absolutely. I think I'll be signing up. Thank you so much, sir. You have a wonderful weekend, okay?
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Bye-bye.